called the draft, and we're basically looking at different hitches reducing the amount of energy required to pull the plow. And the draft is affected by environmental conditions. So for part A, after reading the problem, we want to find the response variable. And I found the response variable to be the draft, because that is what's being affected. That's what we want to find. The treatments would be the newly developed hitch and the standard hitch that they had previously used. And the experimental units would be the 2 large plots of land and then the 25 randomly selected points on the land. So it's asking in question B, given that the goal of the study is to determine whether a newly developed hitch reduces draft compared to the standard hitch, was randomization used properly? And I said yes, because the plots of land were not decided based on variables that affect the draft, like soil type, terrain, and moisture. Rather, the type of hitch that would be plowing the field was randomly assigned to each of the fields, which reduces bias. And then they also picked 25 random points on each field. So rather than looking at the field as a whole, they're looking at 25 different spots, which varies in soil type, terrain, and moisture. For question C, they're asking, given that the goal is to determine whether a newly developed hitch reduces draft compared to the standard hitch, was replication used properly? And for this I said no, because they only looked at 2 plots of land, and although they had 25 randomly selected points, those 25 points, we don't know what the soil type was, what the terrain was, and what the moisture was, which are the 3 environmental conditions that affect draft. So the data could be inaccurate because the environmental conditions could have been different for each of the fields. If they had been the same, it would have been more accurate because we would have been able to see that the hitches were working differently. But one of the hitches could have been assigned to a field that was easier to plow than the other. So if they wanted more accurate data, they could have done 4 fields and took the average of the data to find a more accurate result on whether or not the hitch was actually working. So for part D, it says, the plot of land is a confounding variable in this experiment. Explain why. The plot of land is a confounding variable because it directly relates to both the draft and the type of hitch used. The plot of land correlates with the draft when the tractor is plowing the field and the energy required is more or less based on environmental factors. The plot of land relates to the hitch because depending on which hitch is used, the job of the tractor plowing the field changes with the amount of energy needed, depending on environmental factors that we talked about before.